This is The Resilient Life, where we believe that every human will struggle in this life. Our challenge is to struggle well. I'm Ryan Manion. I lost my brother to war, my mom to cancer, and I'm the daughter of a retired Marine. I'm also a wife, mom, author, and president of one of the nation's leading veteran service organizations. Join me and some incredible guests as we explore the value of struggling well through life's inevitable challenges. Welcome to another episode of the Resilient Life podcast. I'm super excited to welcome today's guest, Miranda Alcaraz. I want to share a little bit about Miranda before we dive in here. Miranda is the co-founder of an at-home workout community called Street Parking, and she was actually one of the first women to compete in the CrossFit Games. Her love of all things fitness began in college when she worked her way through school as a group fitness instructor. She began her career as a personal trainer, and then after finding CrossFit, spent the next 8 years delivering seminars worldwide for the brand while also competing in the CrossFit Games. In 2012, she suffered an unstable C2 fracture in her neck in a car accident and walked around for 17 days without going to the doctor. When she finally saw a doctor, he credited the muscles in her neck for saving her from total paralysis. Once Miranda recognized that fitness saved her life, she began to share her story more. Her CrossFit Games career ended in 2014-2015 when she tore her ACL during competition. Shortly after, she met and fell in love with her husband, Justin, a fellow Games athlete. Together, the two have created Street Parking and have had two sons, Knox and Banner. Motivated by her desire to help real people achieve healthier lifestyles, Street Parking provides daily programming to those with minimal time and equipment. In the past 3 years, its membership has grown to over 30,000 people worldwide. Miranda, welcome to the Resilient Life podcast.
Hello, that was such a good introduction. I was loving it. Thank you.
Well,
and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I've been digging into your story a little bit, and I have to tell you, the whole concept of street parking, I could not be more about it. And I love the idea, and I want to start with that. It's actually what you refer to as your first baby. And I'd love to start with where the idea was born. And I love that one of the things I saw somewhere that you wrote is that when you were posting on social media, you noticed that you were getting more engagement and people were more interested when you were just doing a workout in your house as opposed to in a big, beautiful gym. And was that the catalyst for creating a company like this? Tell us a little bit about the beginning and how Street Parking was born.
Yeah, so I've been in fitness, like you mentioned, since I was 18 years old. I'm now 38, so 20 years, over half of my life, right? And the reason that I got into it in the first place was because I enjoyed working out. I feel like that's why a lot of people get into the industry. They're like, I like working out. Maybe I should just teach other people how to do it. And shortly after, fell in love with helping people, not just lose weight and look better, but just people, the changes that you see mentally and emotionally in people when they overcome obstacles or when they do things they didn't think they were going to be able to do, or when they finish a hard workout. So I fell in love with that. And ultimately, after being in the industry for, I think like 7 or 8 years, that's how I had found CrossFit. And I worked for CrossFit, like you mentioned, for 8 years, traveling all over the place for the seminars, all over the world, and seeing that light go on in people's heads about they're stronger than they thought they were, or that they could be, and they're overcoming these things, and how simple fitness can be, and all of this. And because I was traveling a lot, but I was also trying to compete, I had to be consistent in my own fitness. And I couldn't I was out of town in a random hotel every weekend.
Right.
I think in 2010, I was out of town 47 out of 52 weekends I was traveling.
Wow.
But I was trying to compete. So I would often do workouts in these hotel gyms or even in my hotel room, or me and one of the other trainers would meet and run up and down the stairs in the hotel. I didn't often post that very much of that stuff because I thought it was like lame and boring. It's like, oh, I'm just, but when I started to, because I was traveling more, especially after my knee injury, I noticed that I was traveling more for a new job that I had, and I would be gone for more than just the weekend. I'd be gone for like weeks. And I would start posting these workouts in the hotel gym or in my hotel room or like on the beach with a random kettlebell that I found. And people were like, oh my gosh, I could do this at my house, or oh my gosh, like this is so cool. And so when I was getting home from these trips, I would talk to, my husband's name is actually Julian.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I would say, like we should post some of these somewhere, because he was also still training for the games around this time, and he lived in LA.
Okay.
And the gym where he worked and normally worked out was not far, but in LA terms, it was 45 minutes away, So he was sometimes posting stuff from his garage at the same time that I was traveling a bunch and posting random stuff. And we both noticed that same thing, where we both had a pretty good Instagram following because we were entertainers. And I see so often that fitness, these like fitspos, for like a lack of a better term, they're entertaining. People go to their page because they're beautiful or because they're doing stuff that people could never imagine themselves doing. And we had gained a following through that. But now when we were posting stuff that people could actually like grasp onto and relate to, it was having much more of an impact and actually helping people, not just entertaining them. And that was something that was very appealing to me to continue. So we created the Street Parking Instagram page first and just started posting the little random, what seemed simple to us, workouts, and people just loved it. It was very new for the community that we were in.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think about, when I was diving into street parking a little bit and the concept behind it, not to downplay the importance of it, but it's very basic in nature. It's like, we're going to teach you how to work out from wherever you are. And I was thinking about it the other day. I knew I was going to have you on the show. I was looking into street parking, and I find myself being driven. I'm somebody that pre-pandemic traveled a ton, and I would get into these really great routines when I was home, where I'm lucky enough to have a really nice home gym. I'm very close. The YMCA is a stone throws down the road. And so I had access to whatever I needed when I was at home. But then when I would go on the road, it wouldn't even be a concept in my mind. Maybe I'd pop into the hotel gym if I deemed it like not gross enough to go into. If I was with somebody else and they wanted to go for a run, maybe we'd go for a run. But I'd get into these phases where I'd be really consistent, and then it would just fall off. And then you got to like work your way back in again. And the other night, it was funny. My daughter had, I'm gearing up to do a big hiking trip. And I know I have to put some miles in. So I had I was like, I got to get out. I got to do something. I was going to get on the treadmill with my rucksack. And I got home and my husband was like, this kid has this sport. This kid has this sport. Which one do you want? And I was like, well, I needed to work out. He's like, well, sorry, it's tough. You got to figure out. So I took my daughter to soccer, and I put a 20-pound plate in my rucksack, and I just walked around the field. And that's something that I never would have done. I ended up getting 4.5 miles in the time she had soccer practice. But historically, I would have been like, all right, I'll take her, I'll drop her off, and I'll sit in my car and catch up on emails, or I'll run back home and empty the dishwasher and then go back and pick her up. And it was really looking at your concept of like, you got to find that, you can fit it in wherever you are, that I was like, you know what? That worked, and I actually loved it. And I loved the idea that I was fitting something in while something else was happening. So I think it's great conceptually. I love everything that you're doing. I'd love to know a little bit though, making that shift from the CrossFit community to building your own brand. I mean, CrossFit is the monster of the industry, right? And we have some mutual friends within the CrossFit community. But what does that shift look like from a business perspective, from an entrepreneurial perspective, to say, all right, we've got something here that people are responding to, but how are we going to actually turn this into a business? How are we actually going to, and to that point, you decide to do it with your husband, which is something else I'd love to talk to you about. I love the idea of like how, I want to learn a little bit more about how you work day in, day out with your husband, but talk to me how you take that dive from following and liking what you're doing to actually putting together a sustained business.
Yeah. So people ask about this all the time. Like, why aren't you, we have obviously in the 30,000 members, a lot of those people came from CrossFit.
Sure.
Because they followed me, or because, more recently their CrossFit gym closed and that's how they found us or whatever. But when we were starting it, people do ask us, why didn't you have closer ties or name it CrossFit something or use that in your marketing or anything like that? I have so much love for CrossFit, and I still believe in the methodology with my whole heart. And as far as training and becoming a trainer, I think it's the best certification process and everything. So there's not any weirdness with that. But what I had noticed when I was traveling, doing the seminars, some messages that I would get on my own personal social media, and just even conversations that I would have with real people, my family, things like that. Especially at that time around 2015, 2016, CrossFit had become the CrossFit Games. And it was muscle ups and heavy snatches and barbells. And CrossFit gyms had really adopted the heavy lifting and then the workout programming that everyone was doing, multiple workouts a day. And it was very intimidating to the type of people that I felt like needed what we had to offer. That name. So I felt it best to serve the people and to find the people who could benefit from what we were offering was to not have any specific ties with CrossFit. And then it gave us more freedom as well to throw in movements like the devil press, or, we do a lot of step ups and stuff like that, which you see in gyms now, but wasn't really happening. Everything was with dumbbells, which people don't associate the name CrossFit, at least back then at the time, because this was before they even started using dumbbells in like the open and things like that. Mm-hmm. We wanted to have our own flavor, our own brand. We don't care at all about the whiteboard. We don't care what your score is. And all of that stuff had been so strongly tied to the CrossFit brand, whether they intended it or not, that we needed to branch off to be able to serve people the way that we wanted to serve them. And, it was never intended to be 30,000 people. So in my mind, I wasn't like going to create some business to compete with CrossFit. And I really still don't see it as that. It was literally the conversation that Julian and I had was like, oh my gosh, wouldn't it be cool if we had like 100 members to help pay like our utilities in California? Like right. That was as much as we had thought about it in our mind. And then it just took off. So.
Yeah. And I think you touch on something so important. The word CrossFit, there's a big intimidation factor for some people who don't fully understand it. And all they think about when you see, I can spot a CrossFit Games athlete. I'll say it that way. Okay. Maybe not a CrossFit athlete, but a CrossFit Games, like, or you compete in the games. And I was sharing with you before, there was an actual CrossFit WOD named after my brother, the Manion WOD. It's actually coming up in November. We normally have it in April, but because of COVID, we've pushed it to November. And this WOD is, I love it, but I literally dread it every single week because it is 4 rounds of, 7 rounds of 250. It's all based on my brother's date, 4/29/07. It's like hundreds of squats with weight and Jimmy Letchford, who worked at CrossFit when you were there, he came up with the WOD based off the fact that he said, your brother's legs were like tree trunks, and Travis was a wrestler in college and his strength came in his legs. So he really based the workout around the legs. And I actually share in a book that I wrote, one of the stories that I share is when I did the Manion WOD with Jimmy and his wife. And it was the first time I did the Manion WOD, and we did it at the Naval Academy at their CrossFit gym at the Academy. And I went all out. I did it with my friend. My friend was puking like halfway through. Jimmy's giving me the incredible encouragement. He's like, you're doing great. You're doing great. Within 45 minutes after we had finished, like I could not walk. My legs had like up. So, but I still do it every year. Sometimes I do it twice a year. And, but I know that idea of the intimidation factor that comes with CrossFit. And frankly, I think walking into sometimes any gym, somebody that's trying to get back into physical fitness, it's intimidating to not know what you're doing, not know what you're walking into. And one of the things I love about you is like you're driven by this desire to bring fitness to real people and understanding that not everybody is going to be a games athlete. Not everybody is going to be able to function at a higher level. I'd love to know why you've spent so much time focused on this group of people, the people that it doesn't come from your background of being a fitness instructor when you were young and how you got into fitness, but why focusing on, quote, real people and helping them find their fitness?
Yeah, so I come from a family who's not super active. I mean, my brothers played like hockey in high school. I didn't play any sports. I was active, I guess. I did like dance and cheerleading and stuff like that. But I don't come from like a super active family. A lot of them work out now doing street parking, but before that, no one did, except for me doing CrossFit pretty much. And then, doing CrossFit, the first time that I learned to view fitness differently than for aesthetics or for performance was when I was in the car accident, which you mentioned at the beginning of the show. I broke my neck in 2 places and it went undiagnosed for over 2 weeks. And then when it was finally diagnosed, I had time in the hospital because I had to have my C2 and C3 fused to think like, am I going to be able to do fitness the way that I'm used to doing it? Like what? And I realized during that time that fitness was more to me than trying to make the games or the way that I looked. Like it was a huge physical or mental and emotional, like it was meditation for me. Sure. And I'm a pretty anxious person. I have been my whole life, kind of perfectionist, like, and I recognized immediately the need for movement, even though I was in a neck brace and my hand was broken too. So I was in a cast in my hand. And I was like, I got to get outside and do something. So I was like at CrossFit headquarters, like lunging and air squatting around the parking lot or like pulling a sled. And people were like, you're nuts. And I think people assumed that that I was thinking that I needed to get back into shape to compete, but it wasn't at all. It was, I need to move for my sanity. And that was the first time that I recognized how important and how much sanity fitness was giving me. So there was that. And then, so it really changed my perspective when I went to the seminars where it's like, hey, this stuff isn't just important for people who are trying to compete. Like this is for our health. The amount of muscle that I have, it was made very clear that it saved my life. And, adding just 5 pounds of muscle to a 60-year-old woman could make a huge difference in something like this for her, And so it changed that. I also had an opportunity for about 2 years to train a friend of mine. His name is Gustavo, who was in a car accident when he was 21 and was paralyzed from the waist down. He had like a T11 spinal cord, So I got to train him for 2 years and seeing how we could get creative with him moving and seeing the change in him emotionally and mentally. and just seeing that outlet that he finally had. Because for years he hadn't been able to figure out how to like sweat and just get, you know, anxiety and stress and everything. That changed a lot for me. And it was like, everybody needs this. It's so important. And his health improved and he lost weight and he was happier. And then when it came to, and then I injured my knee, of course, right? And I was like, okay, I need to stop competing. Like, I think I was 32, 33 years old. I had competed in the games multiple times. We were winning when I hurt my knee. And I was like, I know we could have won. Like, check that box. It's fine. Like, it's time for you to figure out the next phase. Because all you're doing right now is working out all day long. I was an entertainer. I wasn't helping anybody, you know? So I was kind of in this weird space and met Julian, moved. And that's when we kind of started to, you know, post those more regular things and seeing that progression. I would say the icing on the cake was about a week after we started the street parking Instagram, I found out I was pregnant. And now I'm now I'm a real person. Like, for the first time, I'm like, oh man, like, I'm going to be pregnant for a year and now I'm a mom. And I'd never really, it was not an intentional pregnancy. So it was like overnight, like an identity shift that I was not ready for.
Right. That's a huge identity shift for sure. And I, like, two things from that. Number one, I love that you touch on, I too am a overly anxious person. And I talk about it a lot. You know, I grew up where my dad's a retired colonel in the Marine Corps. And a lot of the times he would talk to me about if I was struggling and saying, I'm anxious, I'm overwhelmed, my dad's first response would be like, go for a run. And he truly believed that, like, ailments of the mind could be healed by moving your body. And listen, you know, when you're really struggling, you got to get help. But those little things where you're, you know, those things throughout the day, physical activity is a game changer. And I know that, I believe that. And I think that just touching on that and having people look at their physical fitness in a different way into that approach. You know, the first time those endorphins hit and you feel that those endorphins in your body, it's a feeling that can change the whole outlook of your day, your week. And it becomes, to some degree, addictive.
Oh yeah.
But I also, second point is that once you get pregnant, you may not have the time, the ability. You know, what I did after my brother died, I ran a marathon. I was like, I'm going to run a marathon to honor him. And that was my life. I had a child at that time. She was 10 months old, but I also had an incredibly supportive husband that was like, knew what I was dealing with, knew I was going through grief. So it was just like, do what you got to do. Right. And so I was given the bandwidth to be able to focus on running a marathon. Most people don't have that sort of time. And especially when kids start popping up. So, I love that you are so transparent and authentic about your journey in motherhood. And I love that you've brought that to the street parking community, because I think they're, one of the things that I've seen within, there's definitely some platforms that are geared towards specifically women and women with kids. And I love that street parking is that's a piece of it, but it's not all just, this is about women with kids and this is how this is for everybody, right? Mm-hmm. Talk about this idea of consistency. And you say, I've seen one of your mantras being consistency is key. That's something I'd love to dig into with you, because as I shared a little bit earlier, I will tell you, admittedly, my biggest issue is consistency. I am one of those people that I'm either on or I'm off. And I can be on and just be hitting it. And I know how good it is for me, but I can fall off very, very easily. And I've often wondered, and I've thought about this idea of motivation and how can I be constantly motivated? And it was actually, I was it was beginning of the pandemic, and I was on a call with a guy named Jocko Willnick. And if you know who Jocko is, and Jocko was talking, his thing is discipline equals freedom. And I said something to him about motivation, and he said, I don't believe in motivation. He's like, motivation is a fleeting emotion. It comes and it goes. Hence why your consistency comes and goes too. So I'd love to know, when you talk about consistency is key, how do you maintain consistency? What are things that you talk to your community about in terms of staying focused and staying consistent in your fitness journey?
Yeah, so consistency for me, and what I've seen in 20 years of just training people and doing it for myself, it is the missing piece. Everybody struggles with it. Like, your story is no different than 99% of the population. And I think people look at someone like me and they think like, oh, she's wired different than me. Like, she's just motivated. I just can't find the motivation, or I just don't like working out, or I just don't like, let me tell you, I don't always like working out. There's, I mean, plenty of times, especially when I was super pregnant or newly postpartum, where everything was modified and had to be slowed down and kind of uncomfortable. Like, you don't enjoy it, right? The example that I give a lot, which resonates with people, it seems like, is brushing your teeth. No one looks forward to brushing your teeth. No one's motivated to brush their teeth. I mean, we're motivated by not having rotten teeth, but we could be similarly motivated by not having the health issues that come with a sedentary lifestyle, right? So it's no sexier than that, I guess. But we brush our teeth. We do it every day, most of the time, unless you're like, there are days, I'm sure, that we miss. But for the most part, even when you've been momming all day long and you just like, nothing sounds better than just crawling in your bed, you'll hit that last little piece of, wash your face, brush your teeth. Okay. And we just do it because we know it's important and we know it's good for us. And some days we go with the full floss routine and the whole thing, and we're like, in it. And some days it's like a 30-second scrape down and you're in bed.
Totally. That's such a great analogy. I love that.
Yeah. And so fitness is like that. And, the example that I'll give with that also is, on the day that, let's say you do miss a day of brushing your teeth, whatever, you passed out on the couch and then you just went straight to bed. You don't be like, whatever, I missed a day. Like, forget it. I'll start brushing my teeth again next week.
You just do it the next day. You're like, I didn't brush my teeth last night. I was up late. I get it. That's such a great analogy, the brush your teeth analogy. I'm going to use that. And one of the things that I love about what you say, and I was trying to figure out, because I mean, for me, I was like, well, yeah, like I look at you I started following you on social media, and I'm like, well, yeah, we're just wired differently. Like, she's a fitness professional. Of course, she's going to be driven to work out every day. It's her industry. It's what she does. But one of the other things that you say is more than nothing. And there is literally nothing that I love more than these three words, more than nothing, because I think, and it goes back to that brush your teeth analogy, I think I've been driven by this idea, and I know I have, that I have to make sure that I have the perfect amount of time carved out and that I'm going to get in a really good workout in order for me to work out. It's like all or nothing for me, right? And this idea that sometimes you're just going to brush your teeth for 30 seconds, sometimes you have 10 minutes, so do 10 minutes of burpees, and that's what you did for today, right? But that's okay. And then there's going to be other times where you pull out the floss and you get a 6-mile run in, or whatever it may be, but you have more time to give. You have more time to give a better workout to. And so I've been trying to, in the last couple weeks, apply that more than nothing mentality. And I'm interpreting it in my own way. Is that what you mean when you say more than nothing?
Yeah, absolutely. So the goal for people at first is to establish consistency under like, no matter what you have to do, establish consistency. And more than nothing is the phrase that should help you to be able to do that. Eventually, for me now, I am different than a lot of people because fitness is brushing my teeth. I don't think about it. I don't decide if I'm going to work out. I have my like 2 pretty set rest days, Thursdays and Sundays. I usually don't work out. Sometimes I do, or sometimes I move it around, but very generally, like on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, there's not a decision-making process. I just do it. Yes. And sometimes it's, last week it was in an Airbnb at the foot of the bed. And sometimes it's 2 hours because, Julian's mom has the kids and I have time and I don't have anything else I need to be doing. But the decision is already made. And so for most people, they need to get past that. And that takes some time. And so what needs to happen is, I don't care if you literally get up in your office and do, Tabata air squats for 4 minutes, check the box, check the box at first. I don't care if you, completely have to modify it or get, are not moving intense at all, but you just kind of go through the motions, check the box, turn it into the daily habit that's not a decision anymore. And then what you'll notice is some days you are feeling excited about it, or the workout looks super fun, or you have a friend with you and you start to push the intensity a little bit more and a little bit more. People do it the opposite though. They do the intensity first and they take on this huge program with, this mindset that they're going to do all these things. And as soon as it starts to fall off even a little bit, they feel like they failed.
Right.
Where for us, it's like, you don't fail unless you stop showing up completely. If you just stop moving completely, that's the only time that, we need to reset. But as long as you're checking that box, those fleeting moments of motivation will come and go, and you'll be able to push a little bit. And as you start to get fitter, you'll get, more excited about it. You'll be able to do more. You'll start to notice changes, which motivates you further. But the very first thing you have to do is just establish that consistency. So you're absolutely right.
And just think about brushing your teeth. That's it.
Yeah.
That's what I will forever think about now. What do you think the success of street parking is? Do you think it is, when you look at like CrossFit's built off of this community, right? It's like, if you meet a fellow CrossFitter, you're part of that CrossFit community. And I see that within our own organization, the veterans and families of fallen service members that we serve, they feel tied to this greater community. We've got a really distinctive logo at the Travis Manion Foundation. It's a Spartan shield. And if you see somebody wearing that t-shirt, you automatically are like, hey, I don't know you, but I know you. Have you built that same sense of community at street parking? And if so, do you think that attributes to the success of the program itself?
I think that it is the reason that the program is successful. I mean, there's a lot of, especially now, at home, high intensity, dumbbell driven fitness programs, especially in 2020, right? And because I come from a CrossFit background and, I was involved in a lot of like group stuff like that, even as far back as junior high and high school, I know the importance of that. Now, online programs, it's difficult because it's not the same as when you have people walking into the gym and they get to be together and you get to have Christmas parties and you get to, it was a very important piece of it for us from the very beginning, especially, as we got more and more people who were joining our program because they have somewhat of an isolated lifestyle, like stay-at-home moms or people who are constantly traveling for work. Even we do have a big military group within our community of people who are deployed and they're away from their families and their friends that they usually work out with or whatever. Community was huge for us, but it's like, how do you do that if you've never met these people and you don't see them? We, from the very beginning, it's been very important to us to connect with our people through social media. So we have a very active, sometimes a little too crazy active Facebook group.
Okay.
And we have literally a staff of people that follow the hashtag street parking on Instagram, and they will go and like and comment and see and read as many posts as they can of people who are posting that they're doing these workouts. You know, something that I've seen so much, especially in the mom community more than anything else, is there's no one there to tell them if they do more than nothing, if they do the burpees in the bathroom while their kid's in the bathtub. Nobody tells them good job. Nobody sees it. Nobody knows. And so if they put on Facebook that they did it, or they post about it on Instagram or put it in their story, more than likely they're going to get one of our staff telling them, good job, we see you, keep going. And then they connect with each other. You know, if one mom says like, oh, I did it while my kid was in the bath, then it's like 10 other moms will be like, oh my gosh, that's such a good idea, I'm going to do it too, I'm with you, girl, or whatever.
That network is really great.
Yes, there are other really great, as far as the workouts are good, programs that have come out of CrossFit that are for home. This is the reason that our program has the number of people that it does. I know it for sure.
Yeah, so I'm pretty closely involved with the GoRuck community. And when I say that, I haven't done any of like the big GoRuck challenge. I'm friends with the founder. I've got a rucksack. I rucked a marathon with him last year. And I know that even last week when I was at that soccer practice, I had my rucksack on. I took a selfie and I was like 4.5 miles, at GoRuck. And I knew, because anytime I put something out, they're going to post it, and they post it on their story. And I mean, it sounds a little trite, but like, you need that encouragement. Like, all right, someone saw me, they know I'm out there, they know and so I love that. And I think, we talk about it all the time, how whatever your product may be, fitness, food delivery service, anything, the community that's created inside of that company is arguably more important than even the product you're putting out. And to feel that sense of community within it is so, so important. And, I shared with you, someone on my marketing team, she feels very connected to that community. And she's the one who shared with us your story. And, she loves the street parking community. I'd love to talk a little bit. I said we were going to talk about it, running a business with your spouse. And, I'd love to understand, like, what's the division of labor there? Like, how do you make boundaries between right now we're husband and wife and right now we're business partners? And how do you not let those lines blur?
So our story is, it's not one I would recommend to most people in the way that this all came to be. So we met in November of 2015. It was like a few months after I had torn my ACL. He had competed in the games as an individual, and I had just competed in the games on the team. So we knew about each other because that community is very, tight. But we had never actually formally met. And we met and started dating. I still lived in Northern California and he was in Southern California. I moved, not for him at all. Like, I had known him for like a week when I moved, because I had gotten a new job in Southern California working with Progenics while I was still working for CrossFit. Mm-hmm. And we were just dating, whatever, and decided after a year to move in together. So we had gotten approved for this house we were going to move into in Orange County. And we had started posting some of the street parking stuff, and like the idea was formulating. I don't think it was something that we had thought about doing like a paid subscription for yet. It was just kind of like the page and the workouts. And right after we had decided like, hey, let's make this like an actual thing. Let's say when we're going to launch it. We were not married yet. I found out I was pregnant. So we moved in together, found out I was pregnant, and launched this like, hey, let's make a business within like a 2-week period.
Oh my gosh.
And also his mother was living with us, who I had just met. And she's amazing. But it was just
tale right here.
This is not recommended. Now, he had his own business. He had a meal prep company in Southern California that did very well. and I was working for Progenics. I had just left CrossFit when we started street parking, I had left CrossFit a few months before, mostly just because I didn't want to travel anymore. And so, yeah, so again, at the beginning, it was like a side little fun project. It was mostly me doing it, and he would help come up with workouts or film demo videos or whatever, but he was running his business and I was doing my thing. And as I went through my pregnancy, it grew much more than we expected. And it was kind of this like, okay, if we hit, I think it was 2,000 members, I will not go back from my maternity leave to Progenics, and I'll focus on this. Like, we can do this. Like, this is a thing.
Right.
And so that's what we did. And for the next, little while, we had one of his friends would come and help us do some random stuff, but it was just the two of us. So the way that it's worked the best is that there hasn't been a lot of crossover of responsibility. So I have my things that I do, and he has his things that he does based on his strengths versus my strengths.
Okay.
Aside from creating workouts, which we both do, there's not a lot of crossover in our responsibilities. And even still to this day, we have like almost 40 employees now. There's not a ton of crossover with that. The positive that we have going for us is that when we moved to Washington, his mother came with us, and now she doesn't live with us anymore, but she takes care of our boys. She's she's our daycare.
Yeah.
And it's so great. I mean, that's huge.
Super. Yes.
Yeah. But outside of that, we're very equal in parental responsibilities and street parking responsibilities. And so I would say the biggest thing is there's just not a lot of crossover, and he's the most chill person, where I'm the anxious person, which is necessary to a degree for running a successful business. I'm the perfectionist that's going to make sure everything's right. He's the like, hey, let's like not take things so seriously when I start to panic.
I think you have to be that way. And my husband is the same way. My husband is so laid back sometimes that I'm like, no, you have to get more fired up about this, and
yes.
he always kind of brings me down to where I need to be. And I think that's such a good point. If you're both like concentrated on the marketing of the company and the sales of the company, as opposed to saying, hey, this is what I'm good at, and this is what you're good at, and you go do that, and I'll go do that, and together we will build this brand. So I think that's good advice. I think, the idea of getting into business with your spouse, I mean, gosh, I don't know if my husband and I would be as successful. We would probably be that cautionary tale, but I love the idea that you can, especially right now in the middle of everything we're going through, you have this, like, it's me, it's my husband. Of course you have like 40 employees, but I'm sure they're everywhere across the country. You've got your mother-in-law and your kids, and you're just, you're finding your success together and growing together. And I love that. I think that's, I think it's a really beautiful thing. I'd love to just briefly touch on, again, you've got, and you talked about from your CrossFit days, like you grew quite a following within social media and in Instagram specifically. And I think with that comes some criticisms, and I'd love to know, I see you've got like such a supportive community, but you've also received criticisms, and I give you so much credit. You're not someone that turned your comments off or delete your comments. And, I see a lot of people with big followings that do that. And you know why? It's because people are saying something they don't want them to see. But I'd love to know, what are some of the challenges that have come with being someone that's out there? You put your kids out there. I do the same thing. I by no means have the social media following that you do, but I'm very open about wanting to share not just what I do, but who I am as a person. And I see you do that as well. What are some of the challenges that you faced because of that?
Yeah, I mean, social media is a weird place, and I am there's just something in me that needs to share. Like, I am a sharer, and I feel specifically when it comes to health and fitness and the trials that I've had, you know, from the car accident to the knee to the pregnancies, all of it. Um, I feel that I've been so fortunate to have fitness be the toothbrushing, you know, thing in my life that it is.
Yeah.
And I know the impact that it's making, that I need to share it because I want other people to find it and to use me as, you know, somebody to look to that has been able to do it, right? Um, but yeah, like you said, with that comes, I mean, when I was competing, it was, you look like a man. I had really short hair and I was just more muscular than I am now. And you look like a man, like you're gross, like how many steroids are you on, and this and that. And then I've, since I got pregnant with my first son, who's now 3, I lost like 40,000 Instagram followers through that pregnancy.
Wow.
Because that's just because, again, I was an entertainer with, you know, the short shorts and the muscle ups and the snatches and the, you know, silly things that I was doing as a single person with no kids and fitness. And it just wasn't people's vibe, which is totally fine, by the way. Like, if you're not in that stage in your life, you probably don't need to see a pregnant lady.
A pregnant lady working out.
Yeah. But it just goes to show, I mean, a lot of people, I've seen it, fitness, other CrossFit Games athletes or fitness people who go completely dark when they're pregnant and they don't post any of the real life stuff. And I think it's such a shame because the followers that I have now who have been with me through this whole journey, you know, it shows them like, hey, I've gone through real life too.
Right.
And this is how I've still managed to make it work. And that's just so important to me. But, you know, I mean, I had a natural home birth this last one, and people are not into that. You know, some people think that's really bad to do, or you know, when I first started dating Julian, because I was married before, people automatically assumed that he broke up our marriage, even though we had never even met, and we're calling him like a home wrecker and all this stuff. And it's just crazy. And I'm still really bad at just ignoring it and knowing these people don't really know me, or there's something going on in their life that's like, I've never ever in my life commented something mean on a stranger's Instagram. Like, I don't even know what kind of a day I would have to be having to
Ditto.
do something like that.
Ditto.
Yeah. So you have to think of it like, what is going on with this person that they are like, first of all, they know so much about me. And then,
Yeah. And I think, you know, I always think, again, that, you know, sometimes my husband will be like, why are you putting that out there? Like, why are you putting, and I'm an oversharer too. And I want people to not just know who I am when I'm like standing on a stage in front of 1,000 people and giving a speech. I want people to know who I am when, you know, my hair's greasy in a bun and I'm wearing a 3-day-old sweatshirt. And I try to show that side of myself, but you do leave yourself open to critique. And I give you a lot of credit. I feel you. And I think one of the most damaging things with social media today is the persona you can create by only showing one piece of yourself. And there are far too many people out there with huge platforms that, you know, the people that will hide the pregnancy just because they have a certain image they need to uphold. And I love that you're just real. And I think that's probably why not only do you have a huge following, but you have huge engagement because people want to share within your story. I love it.
you know, it's really freeing. It's really freeing too. Like, I want people to think of it in a different way. I feel so bad for people who have this like perfectly curated Instagram where they look perfect all the time and they look, you know, a certain way. How do you go out in public? like, I would be terrified at all times that I would run into somebody who follows me on Instagram and see what I really look like. Like, it's freeing. Like, if I show that, hey, this is what my skin actually looks like, and this is what my face and my body actually looks like, and this is what I actually wear, and you can just go out in the world and you're the same person no matter where you go all the time. And I can't imagine the anxiety that I would have if I felt like every time I left the house, I had to match this person that I was putting out on Instagram. That sounds exhausting.
Yeah, totally. I love everything that you're about. I search high and low for women that can be a positive example, not only of what they're doing professionally, but what they represent as a mother, as a wife. I think it's so important for, I often hear a lot of times this idea of how I get asked a lot, like, how do you do it all? How do you do everything you're doing and then also be a good wife and a good mother? And, I've been guilty of saying, it's all about finding the balance. And I've come, I've given that answer knowing that's not really what I mean. Like, I've come to realize that I don't know that you're never going to find that balance. I mean, there may be 1 minute of one day where I'm like, oh, okay, everything's working out. But in terms of like a true work-life balance as a mother, it doesn't exist. But I've also come to accept that that's okay. It doesn't have to exist. And I think that just the way that you put out there that, you're being the best you can be, you're doing the best you can, and then also building this business around like just giving it what you can when you can, it's enlightening. I thank you so much for that. And to your husband too. He does not go unthanked in that, but you've been through a lot. You've dealt with a debilitating neck injury. You tore your knee, going through again as a fitness guru, and then giving birth to 2 children. That changes the trajectory of what you're doing. What do you think what have you been most proud of out of everything from 18 years old as a fitness instructor to now 38 years old? Every job that you've had, everything that you've done, both personally and professionally, what has brought you the most joy and you've been most proud of?
Without question, what brings me the most joy are my sons.
Yeah.
And that's not something that I would expected to myself to say. And I think that's really important for people to hear. At 30, I had my first son at 35. At 30 years old, if you asked me if I was going to have kids, I would have told you that I don't know. That maybe, I don't know. Like I wasn't somebody who grew up like just dying to be a mom. I've always been very achievement driven, career driven. And, even my first child was unintentional. When Julian and I had started having those talks, I did want to have children with him, but I wasn't ready for it or whatever. And I never pictured and never could have explained or understood how being a mom changes you and how much joy it can bring into your life. And it's still shocking to me how much more joy it brings me than almost anything else that I do. Aside from that, because I think that's like the easy answer, I would say that being in the fitness space for as long as I have and being able to maintain realness is something that I'm very proud of, because it is really hard. I know how to take my Instagram from 300,000 followers to 1 million followers. It's the easiest thing in the world. You just wear shorter shorts and take the photo from a different angle and Photoshop it a little bit more, and anyone can do it. And I know that that's how to do it. And the fact that I've never gone down that path, or I've never been dragged into that whole scene, which is whether it's Instagram or even before Instagram, it was, just how you were at the gym or whatever. It's always been there in fitness, and it always will be. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know exactly how I've avoided it, but I am very proud of that.
Well, I think you've done a tremendous job. And it's funny, I was talking with somebody the other day about Instagram, and mine used to be very private. I actually had it as a private account. It was for my like friends and family, and that's where I would post pictures of my kids. And I made it public not too long ago, and I have a little bit of a following. And I said, I forget what I had posted, but it was something like super poignant, and I felt like, oh my gosh, this is great, and got a little bit of engagement. And then like a week later, I posted a picture, a selfie of myself on my dad's boat, and it wasn't provocative or anything, but it was definitely like, oh, this is a cute picture of me. And the picture like blew up, and I'm like, oh my God, it's really, that's what it is, and it can be disappointing from that perspective. So I totally get what you're saying. Miranda, I'd like to end today with the question that I asked everybody before we close out each episode. And that is, what does living a resilient life look like for you?
I think, resiliency starts in your attitude toward life. We can't avoid discomfort. We can't avoid suffering. We can't avoid bad things happening. But just continuing to put one foot in front of the other. Everybody's bad thing, everybody's bad day, everybody's, trauma is going to be different. What decides where you go from there is just whether or not you keep showing up for your own life. And to me, that's how I would describe being a resilient person.
Yeah. Showing up, almost, bringing it back to consistency.
Brush your teeth.
Your teeth. Resiliency is your teeth, right? That's
yeah.
Miranda, thanks so much for joining us today. It's been awesome to talk to you. I encourage everyone, and we're going to put the links to street parking, your Instagram account. That'll be in all the show notes. I encourage everyone to check it out. Thank you so much for sharing a little bit more about your world, and looking forward to getting to know more about street parking. And I'm telling you right now, I'm going to sign up. I've been hearing a lot about it, so I'm going to get that. And when I'm traveling, that's going to be my thing. I'm taking the street parking approach. I'm going to start brushing my teeth each and every day.
Awesome. I can't wait.
Thanks so much for joining us for another episode of the Resilient Life podcast. I really loved this discussion. I loved diving into the idea of how you take an idea and a concept and turn it into a business. I loved Miranda talking about the challenges of motherhood and what that means within the fitness industry, and the idea of finding this balance of how we can work to find a balance between what we love and being a parent. And I think it's so important. And by far, the biggest takeaway I have from this episode is the analogy of brushing your teeth, and brushing your teeth in order to set that consistency for how important it is to take your physical fitness and your physical health and make it a priority in your life. So along with brushing my teeth each day, I'm going to make sure that I make a commitment to move my body each and every day and make sure that it starts to become natural, just like brushing your teeth is. So Miranda, thank you for joining us on the podcast. Please make sure to subscribe, like, and share the Resilient Life podcast with your friends. And thank you so much for joining us.